for our main topic. So this
Okay.
is, like I said, I did a poll a few weeks ago on what topic we can talk about on my previous episode,
Mhm.
and there was the true story of Josh, which I did last week, and then there was the missing 401 stories.
Yes.
They were so close in the poll, like literally by 49, 48%. That I was like, I'll just do the missing stories on my following episode, and that was you. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, we're gonna talk about some of the some weird ones of the missing 411 stories. And these are all adults. I know there's children or kid stories, and that's I'm not gonna cover that one those because those I have my own
Yeah.
thing myself, and I don't want to really
Let's do the adults because they're grown up.
yeah, yeah. It's still sad, but it's even sadder when the kids go missing.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go over some of these stories. So the first story is Steven Kubacki. This is in 1977. I don't know if you know any of these or you've heard any of these stories.
I tried to do my
Do
research before I was gonna join this, but I'm more intrigued of like the stories that you found, so we can dive
okay.
into it.
Okay, so 1977, he was 24 years old. Um, he was a country skier, so you know about skiing.
Yes.
Um, so he was going around Lake Michigan, right? Once he reached the edge of the lake, he decided to take a break, take off his skis. He sat down. When he got up to leave, his tracks were gone, like where he was walking
Oh,
from,
uh-huh.
and he became lost. The last thing he remembers was walking through the snow, feeling numb, exhausted. Then he blacked out. In a blink of eye, it was spring. So he blacked out in the winter, woke
Uh-huh.
up when it was spring. He was lying in a grassy field in the middle of a forest, wearing clothes that weren't his. Sitting next to him was a stranger's backpack containing running shoes and glasses that he did not bring with him.
Okay.
He hiked to the nearest town and asked a local resident where he was. They told him he was in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. So he went missing
That's
in
a long
Michigan
walk.
and yeah, and went to Massachusetts, 700 miles away where he had been skiing. His aunt and father lived there in that same town. So he knocked on his aunt's door. His family was shocked, hugging him, asking where he's been. He was missing for 14 months.
Jeez.
But in his mind, he was only gone for.
Like a day.
You ever done that when you fell asleep, right? You fall asleep and you're like, oh my gosh, like where did the time go,
Oh
right?
yeah, that happens to me every day almost.
This dude did like 14 months.
Yeah. Like
Yeah. Oh, look at this. This is cool. Look, bringing us together. That's awesome.
are you the missing link?
Yeah. Hey, Miss Martin Muse. Good to see you. Um, like I can't quite explain this one. It's kind of weird, right? Before I continue on the story, what do you think happened to him?
Man, I don't know. I can be jokingly about it or like I really do believe like he did not plan any of this. But if you're in the forest and you wake up in a grassy field, my only thought is just like how much shrooms did you take?
Yeah, but he was 700 miles away.
That's true. He did relocate, but maybe you're that far gone on whatever hallucinogen
Yeah.
you have the energy just to go and walk and find your own path, and somehow you're 700 miles away from your
Yeah, I'm not gonna
original.
say aliens, but it could
Yeah.
be aliens.
But it's yeah, as far as that, like, I don't know. That's super weird. I wonder if it was like a medical condition because I've heard people like would just zone out and realize that they were doing something else that they weren't conscious about.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's what some of these people say. So when Kubiak had first gone missing, the search team found his poles, his skis, on the edge of the lake. So they found all his stuff, but not him. There was only one set of his footprints leading toward the water, but none walking away. They can only assume he drowned himself in the freezing lake, had been missing for so long. Everyone assumed he must have been dead. The official explanation is that he had amnesia and that he was wandering in a fatigued state, 700 miles. But
Hmm.
even doctors are baffled by this case. It's incredibly rare for someone to lose their memory for such a long chunk of time. Now he's written a book about this because he's still alive. He's written a book. He's gone to universities and talked about this. So many unanswered questions. it's always studied in like psychology classes. So this is like one of
Yeah.
the first like popular missing. Um, some people in the chat here are saying that he was probably probed from aliens. Rip Van Winkle, yeah, maybe.
To
So
what he thought would be a day, but to the extraterrestrials, it was 14 months.
yeah, I think maybe he got sucked in some weird Lake Michigan portal and
And this was
ended up.
back in the 70s, so probably the aliens didn't have GPS back then. So they're just like, yeah, this is where we found him. Here
Oh,
in Massachusetts, not in Lake
hmm,
Michigan.
that's a good theory. I like that
Yeah.
one.
That's just like my
But
thinking.
luckily, like I said, he's alive. But 14 months gone.
Yeah, and then like how I said earlier, it might have been like a medical condition and amnesia. And I
Mhm.
know when you're just dead tired from hiking, I don't do a lot of hiking, but someone close does avid hiking, and she leads tours to tops of mountains and everything. And she always has tons of food, water with her because the fatigue from hiking is real, especially if you're going in elevation.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, Jacob's pretty crazy story. So now here's the second one. This is a little. This is Danny Filippidis. I'm horrible with names. You've already known that already.
Flippidus.
Flippidis.
Flippidus.
Anyways, this is
There you
pretty recent. So he went. This was in 2000 in February 2018. He's Canadian.
go. Mhm.
Again, a ski trip. Do not go skiing.
Well, this is only convincing me now not to go skiing.
Yeah, he went skiing with friends in New York. It was around 2 p.m. and they had been skiing for hours. They were getting ready to go into the lodge, and Danny said that he wanted to go on one more run down the mountain before their lunch break.
Mhm.
By 4 p.m., Danny was failing to return any calls or texts, and his friends were concerned. They began searching for him, and after being unable to find him, they told the employees at the lodge that he was missing. A team of 130 people scoured the mountain without finding him. 6 days later, his the wife received a phone call. She didn't recognize the number, and it sounded very far away and static. It was Danny's voice. He was incoherent, confused, and then hung up the phone. She called the number back and pleaded with him to call 911 for help. So he did. He had no
Mhm.
idea where he was and just described his surroundings. When the paramedics finally found him, he was still wearing his ski gear and needed medical assistance. He was holding a brand new iPhone and someone had cut his hair.
Huh. Well, that's so wild though.
Yeah,
Usually when
Canadian.
yeah, Canadians are so nice. Like, he just needs help, so I'm gonna give him a phone so he can call his wife and give him his fresh haircut.
But guess where he called from? So somehow he ended up in
Oh.
Sacramento, California, at the airport terminal car rental depot. He was 3,000 miles away. Remember, he was in New York where he disappeared. He couldn't
Yeah.
remember how he got there. He had no idea what day it was. When he learned where he was and how long people had been looking for him, he got very overwhelmed and emotional. The leading theory is that he was kidnapped in the back of a big rig truck, but no proof of this ever surfaced.
Dang.
So, yeah, he was in New York, went missing. 5 days later, was in Sacramento.
Yeah. And I wonder what the temperature was like in Sacramento, because if you're like skiing and trying to go down another mountain for another round, you have all this gear on you, so you're sweating profusely. But another thing too, I guess when he was leaving the restaurant or the lodge, someone might have come up behind him and said, like, "Does this smell like chloroform to you?" And then, yeah, put him in the big rig truck and kidnap him all the way to California.
Yeah, a lot of people say typical Canadian. They just kind of wander. All right. So no, this is number three. So this is James McGrogan. Now this is another famous one. This was in 2014. Pretty recent.
Mhm.
So he's a medical doctor. Do you know? Have you ever heard of split snowboarding?
I have not.
So I guess it's kind of like they say that it's kind of like cross country skiing.
Okay.
So like you
But
go
with
long
snowboards.
distance. Yeah, you just go long distance.
Okay.
So let's see here. So he came prepared with his cell phone and satellite GPS. So he was prepared. He was
Yeah.
much faster than his friends, so he said that he would wait for them at the next stop. They lost sight of him, um, and never saw him at any of the stops along the trail. So when the search team went looking for him, they found no tracks in the snow that veered off the trail. So they had no idea where he could have possibly gone. So they're like, "Where did he go?" 5 days later, his body was 4 miles away. As the crow flies, I guess it's where they found his body,
Yeah.
which was more like a 14-mile hike. And as he would have had to climb up mountains in order to get there. His body was found by two hikers at the bottom of a frozen waterfall. The search party had gone over the area multiple times before had never seen him until that day. So they
Wow.
were even down there where they found him, and then they 5 days later. So he
Wow.
apparently he was 4 miles away, but it was kind of like a 14-mile hike because you had to like scour mountains just to get where he was. So
Yeah.
there's no way that he would have ended up there.
That's
Um,
so crazy. Like, it could be like what we'll go into later on that Bigfoot probably found him and just like, I'm just gonna lay him here, hoping someone would find him.
well,
Mm, yeah, that's just like,
You could be true on that. So he was, mangled in a strange position.
oh,
His skull was crushed, and as if he had fallen from the sky.
oh,
He was still wearing his ski outfit and helmet, but there were no boots on his feet. He had also taken off his gloves. The search and rescue team later found his discarded split snowboard, but they never found his boots. His cell phone and GPS were still working, and he had packed a backup battery as well. They tested the area where he was found, and there was a cell phone signal, yet never called anyone for help. They say it could be accidental, but
oh. But like that doesn't explain like if he fell from the sky and his skull is crushed, he probably like tripped and fell. Blunt force trauma is a real thing, so I'm not sure if someone just premeditated murder
y-
and just went at it.
yeah, yeah. Because remember now, snowboard it like splits so you can walk.
Mhm.
Maybe he was
Oh, you're right.
walking, but again, and he slipped down this waterfall. But again, he would have had to really hike to get where he was. So
Yeah.
maybe a big bird grabbed
Yeah.
it.
I've seen some pretty big birds. So,
Maybe. Yeah, like a big eagle or something. I
like
don't
a
know, but
hawk, like just swooped down, picked them up, and they're like, this is it. Like, have you ever seen those videos of like big, massive eagles or hawks that go after the goats on the mountain and just like grab them like they're nothing, take them all the way in the air, and then drop them to their
yeah,
death so they can have
yeah,
their lunch? So maybe this could have been
hmm
happening to James.
yeah, maybe. So unfortunately, this one he did not make it, but he very
Man.
weird how this happened. So I've got one more, and this is one of the oldest kind of stories, but one of the most famous ones. This is Bessie and Glenn Hyde in 1928. So they were newly married. Um, there's even a book about these two. They wanted to take a boat down the Colorado River. I'm sure you know where that is.
Man, I do.
Yeah. Yeah. So it goes down from the Grand Canyon all the way down the side of Arizona.
Mhm.
Um, so they were, yeah, so just hundreds of miles long. It's a very long river, very wild river. Like if you ever seen that movie, what is it, with Kevin Bacon, where they're on the, what is it called, River Wild?
Okay, I haven't seen that movie, but I know which one
Yeah,
you're talking about.
it's crazy. Um, so it would take like several days journey, and Glenn had prepared for their honeymoon for a long time. So this was their honeymoon, right? They wanted
Mhm.
to do this thing. He wanted to win prize money for the new speed record, and she wanted to be the first woman to ever make the trip. So it was a real big thing for them. During the journey, they would stop to hike some of the trails. They met a photographer named Emily Cobb, who took pictures of them and later gave the photos to the police when they never arrived at their destination, so they went missing. Glenn's father became very worried. He asked the park rangers to send an airplane over the river, and they spotted the couple's boat. It was floating upright with no sign of ever being overturned. Their
Mm.
supplies were still in the boat as well, but the couple was nowhere to be seen. Some people say Other people in the chat are saying the photographer did it.
They'll never believe me.
Yeah. So yeah, then it's pretty sad there too. The story of Betsy and Glen Hyde has been retold so many times; it's even become a sort of a legend. Like stories of Betsy's ghost has been spotted near the river. There have been multiple theories. In 1971, an elderly woman claimed that she witnessed Glenn abusing her, or Bessie, and Bessie stabbed him and ran away. This woman
Oh.
later recanted her story, however, saying she made it up for attention.
Mm.
A few years later, the unidentified body of a man in his 20s was found buried near the cabin of the photographer.
Ooh.
The man had a bullet in his skull, and it was determined that this was not the body of Glenn, but still led some people to believe that since Cobb was one of the last people to see them alive, he could have murdered them.
Yeah. Like the photographer, like, I'll do it and they'll never ever suspect that it's me.
Yeah,
I don't know,
this is another
officer. Here's
interesting
the
one.
photos. Like I took the photos and didn't see them since then. And that was back in the 20s. So, forensic
Yeah,
science wasn't that advanced yet.
yeah. They started detective work in 1928. You could lie about killing people easily. Yeah,
That's true.
yeah. You could.
Mhm.
That photo though that I showed you, I'll bring it back up. That
Yeah.
was taken by the photographer.
It's
That
him.
was the last. That's the last known photo of them.
Jeez.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But dang, this is
Uh,
like all good information because like I like this type of like
oh yeah,
mystery stuff because I'm like, what if it was this? Like try to like pin it together.
yeah. Some of them are kind of like really eerie, right? Like maybe it was aliens, or maybe it was could be a mountain lion that dragged the body or whatever,
That's mountain lions are real.
or a
And that
murder.
only convinces me not to go skiing here in the mountains of Colorado because of things like this. And I do not want to be a story like that. And if I were to go hiking, I'm going to provide a very good photo to my family and friends. This is what I look like. It's going to be a nice photo of me. So when it's all on the news, at least I look good in the photo.